Shabbat Shalom once again. When my kids were little, they used to love Thomas the Train. And one of their favorite board books was called Go, Thomas, Go. I can still hear the rhythmic words which my kids would often repeat. Hurry, Thomas, take me to the train show. Take me there fast. Go, Thomas, go. The world we inhabit is one of constant motion. We are always going. From the minute we wake up until the moment we go to sleep, there are family commitments, work commitments, school commitments, volunteer commitments, social engagements, kids' parties, after-school activities, sporting events, social clubs, temple events, and the list could go on. Like them or not, these are the things that fill our hours all day, every day, morning, noon, and night. Coming up with an hour to spare is often like breaking the genetic code. Amateurs need not apply. Carl Honore, author of the book In Praise of Slowness, comments on this phenomenon with a cartoon. And in it, two little girls are standing at the school bus stop, each clutching a planner. One says to the other, "Okay, I'll move ballet back an hour, reschedule gymnastics, and cancel piano. You shift your violin lesson to Thursday, skip soccer practice, and that gives us from 3:15 to 3:45 on Wednesday the 16th to play." For a brief moment, COVID seemed to shift this paradigm because as we collectively stayed at home, time was suddenly all we had. But that period seems to have passed, and we find ourselves once again back in this ceaseless, endless busyness grind. It's almost de rigueur, this pathological obsession to do and produce and participate. The more we do, the more successful we appear to be. Our work schedules begin long before 9 and extend far beyond 5. Technology, for the better or worse, keeps us connected all day, every day. There is almost never a time we can't be reached, never a moment when we are separated from our devices, whether we're at home playing with our children or at dinner with our partners, out to the movies with friends, or sitting on the beach. We're always linked in. Journalist Brian Lumpkin, in an article from May 2021, writes, "New studies show that workers around the world are putting in an average of 9.2 hours of unpaid overtime each week. That's up from 7.3 hours just a year prior. And since the pandemic hit, the work weeks got longer. People were sending emails and Slack messages at midnight as boundaries between personal and professional lives dissolved." Lumpkin continues, "But millions of us overwork because somehow we think it's exciting, a status symbol that puts us on the path to success." In 2014, The New Yorker called this devotion to overwork a cult. The so-called cult of overwork is not only limited to adults. We are seeing it in children and teens and college students too. Meet Becky, a Harvard student featured in an article called "Nonstop: Today's Superhero Undergraduates." We learned that Becky writes out her daily schedule to the minute. And frequently, her classes and meetings run from 8 a.m. until 11 p.m. "It's exhausting," she says. "You never let yourself rest. College here is like daring yourself to swim the length of a swimming pool without breathing." But as the author of the article observes, Becky's ceaseless activity leaves little space or time for reflection on who she is or what she wants. I'm more terrified of being bored than busy, Becky explains, though I'm scared I'll work myself into a pile of dust if I don't learn when to stop. Becky's not an anomaly. She is a prime example of the way so many of us and our children lead our lives. Our communities have high, often impossible standards, and we live under enormous pressure to succeed. To these ends, we strive so hard, pedaling until we are out of breath. The late Rabbi Jacob Rudin used to tell this haunting tale. It's about a man who was told he could have all the land he could encompass in a day's journey. At sunrise, he set forth, walking briskly from his starting point. The sun moved higher and the man began to run. He could get more land if he ran. Hurry, hurry, the afternoon waned. Run, run, more land, more. And at sundown, the man staggered toward the starting point, exhausted, his last bit of strength drained. And as he came to where he started, he fell over, dead. In a viral essay entitled How Millennials Became the Burnout Generation, Anne Helen Peterson explains that burnout was first recognized as a psychological diagnosis in 1974 to cases of physical or mental collapse caused by overwork or stress. Burnout is of a different category than exhaustion, though it is related. Exhaustion means going to the point where you can't go any further. Burnout means reaching that point and pushing yourself to keep going, whether for days or weeks or years. Many of us know what it's like to push ourselves to the limit. We recognize the pressure to do and be and perform and please and all the while succeed. But at a certain point, we must ask ourselves, what exactly are we trying to achieve? Somehow in this world of ours, the means, the speed and energy have become the ends. Given how entrenched this mindset is, it is clear we need more than just a break from these unhealthy patterns. We need a realignment. This week in Parshat Vayelech, read so beautifully by Rabbi Ehrlich, we see Moses attempting to do just that. As he nears the end of his life, Moses says, I am now 120 years old. Lo uchal od latzet velavo. I can no longer be active. Moses, our prophet par excellence, our fearless, determined leader for 40 years, the man who took every burden upon his shoulders, here says, my job is now done. As our commentaries teach us, it isn't that Moses wanted to give up his position. No, the contrary. This was his life, his calling, his passion, and he was desperate to stay on and continue. But in this, his 11th hour, he finally recognized his limits. He was 120 years old. He had given every ounce of energy that he possessed, body, mind, and spirit, to this mission. It was time to step down and slow down. Our Torah portion, situated as it is between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, speaks to the lessons implicit in this season. This is our time to pause and reflect on our lives, to determine if we're meeting the mark or missing it altogether. It's our moment to stop and take stock of who we are, where we're going, what we hope to become. If there were ever an opportunity to pause the hamster wheel, to look up from the computer, to put away the to-do list, to set aside the piles of work and emails, to breathe. It is now, during this season of rebirth and renewal and repentance. For now is the time to ask, should we be setting limits in our lives? Does the way we spend our time reflect the sacred values of our tradition? Are we giving enough time and energy to our families and loved ones, our faith, and our communities? Are we saving enough time for love, friendship, connection, and study? Must we wait until 120 to set our priorities in order? On this Shabbat Shuvah, we know the answer. There is no better time than the present to attend to our priorities. There is no better time than the present to recognize our limits and our frailties. And there's no better time than the present to acknowledge how our lack of limits impacts our bodies, our minds, and our relationships. Now is the time to ask for forgiveness from God and from those in our midst. And now is the moment to reformat the rhythm of our days. What courage it must have taken for Moses to utter these words, Lo uchal od latset velavo. I can no longer be active. And what courage it will take for us to follow, to say, I can no longer schedule my days or my children's days without a single moment to breathe. I can no longer refrain from building a protective fence around my personal and family time. I can no longer fill every second with something I deem productive. I'm tired. I'm unsettled. And I'm yearning for more love, more laughter, more space, more spontaneity, more meaning, more connection, more faith, more imagination, more health, more strength, more longevity. A High Holy Day prayer begins, you can't rush a prayer to God. If it comes from the heart, it will rush out on its own. On this Shabbat Shuvah, may we find the will to pause and decelerate. May we have the courage to reflect on our priorities and the humility to recognize where we've gone astray. May we use this time to meditate on the allures associated with ceaseless striving and the superhero pathology so pervasive in our culture today. And may we see with clear eyes a new path before us, a path more spacious, more gracious, less hurried than the one we currently tread. We ask for God's help in all of these endeavors and for God's loving support as we attempt to change our lives for the slower and for the better. Ken Yehiratzon. Shabbat Shalom.